The case of Sean Combs, widely known by his stage name Puff Daddy or Diddy, has become one of the most scrutinized and complex criminal trials in recent American legal history. The allegations are grave: a multi-year, organized scheme involving sex trafficking, racketeering, and conspiracy, with prosecutors asserting that Combs operated a criminal enterprise that exploited victims through coercion, violence, and manipulation. The case's high-profile nature, celebrity status of the defendant, and the extensive evidence collected have made it a focal point for legal experts, media outlets, and the public alike. This is to provide a comprehensive, detailed account of the case, exploring the legal charges, prosecutorial strategies, defense tactics, courtroom proceedings, evidentiary battles, and broader implications for criminal law and celebrity accountability. Drawing on insights from seasoned legal professionals, court records, and public reports, we will delve into the intricacies of the trial, contextualize its significance within the landscape of federal criminal prosecutions, and examine the potential outcomes and societal impacts. Sean Combs' journey from humble beginnings to global superstardom is well documented. Born into poverty, he rose to fame through his musical talent, entrepreneurial ventures, and charismatic persona. His influence extended beyond music into fashion, business, and social media, making him one of the most recognizable figures in entertainment. However, alongside his public success, allegations of misconduct and criminal behavior have persisted. The current trial is not the first time Combs has faced legal scrutiny, but it is arguably the most serious, involving allegations that threaten to dismantle his reputation and career entirely. The charges stem from an investigation that spans several years, involving multiple law enforcement agencies, including the FBI and federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York. The case is built upon a foundation of extensive video evidence, witness testimonies, financial records, and digital communications, all pointing toward a pattern of exploitation and organized criminal activity. The core of the prosecution's case rests on the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO. Originally enacted in the 1970s to combat organized crime, RICO allows prosecutors to charge individuals involved in ongoing criminal enterprises with a pattern of racketeering activity. The law requires proving that the defendant was part of an enterprise engaged in a pattern of predicate crimes, such as sex trafficking, violence, or fraud, over a continuous period. In Combs' case, prosecutors allege that he operated a criminal enterprise that systematically exploited victims over more than a decade. The evidence suggests that Combs and his associates created infrastructure, such as private venues, digital networks, and logistical support, to facilitate ongoing trafficking activities. The RICO charge enables the prosecution to reach back years, even decades, to establish a pattern of criminal conduct, effectively bypassing statutes of limitations that would normally bar prosecution of older crimes. The second major component involves multiple counts of sex trafficking. Federal statutes define sex trafficking as recruiting, harboring, transporting, or coercing individuals into commercial sex acts through force, fraud, or coercion. The law emphasizes the importance of proving that the defendant used threats, violence, or manipulation to induce victims into participating in illegal sexual activities. In this case, the prosecution contends that Combs orchestrated a network where victims, some of whom were minors or vulnerable adults, were coerced into performing sexual acts with him and others. The evidence includes hours of video footage showing violent incidents, drug-fueled sexual sessions, and testimonies from victims who describe being threatened or blackmailed. The conspiracy aspect involves demonstrating that Combs and his associates coordinated their efforts over a prolonged period, establishing a criminal enterprise. The government must prove that multiple individuals entered into an agreement to commit these crimes, with a shared understanding and ongoing cooperation. Additional charges include traveling across state lines for the purpose of engaging in prostitution. This element underscores the interstate nature of the alleged trafficking scheme, which is a federal offense. The prosecution's case is bolstered by an enormous trove of digital evidence. Hundreds of hours of video recordings, text messages, emails, and social media communications. These recordings depict violent incidents, drug use, sexual acts, and threats. The videos, some of which are entered into evidence under seal, are central to establishing the pattern of coercion and violence. Victims such as Cassie Ventura, known publicly as Cassie, have provided detailed testimonies about their experiences. Ventura's testimony is particularly impactful because she appeared pregnant during her court appearance, adding emotional weight and credibility. Her account describes violent episodes, drug abuse, and coercion, painting a vivid picture of exploitation. Other witnesses, including Mia and Jane, pseudonyms to protect identities, have testified about their own experiences, corroborating Ventura's account. Their testimonies include descriptions of being pressured into sexual acts, threatened with violence or blackmail, and manipulated into compliance. Legal experts and forensic psychologists have been called to explain the dynamics of coercion, manipulation, and trafficking. Their testimony helps jurors understand the psychological tactics used by traffickers to maintain control over victims. Videos showing Combs physically assaulting victims, such as the hotel scene where he throws Cassie Ventura to the ground, are pivotal. These images serve to demonstrate the use of violence as a tool of coercion, aligning with federal definitions of trafficking. The defense has admitted that Combs struggled with drug addiction and was prone to violence. They concede that he paid for sex and engaged in violent acts but argue that these behaviors do not constitute ongoing coercion or trafficking. A central element of the defense is the assertion that victims, including Cassie Ventura, consented to the acts. They argue that Combs' actions, while morally questionable, do not meet the legal threshold for coercion under federal statutes. The defense has challenged the admissibility of certain videos and testimonies, attempting to exclude evidence they claim is prejudicial or irrelevant. For example, they filed motions to suppress videos of violence, which the court ultimately denied. The defense has also attacked the credibility of victims by highlighting their histories with drugs, mental health issues, or personal motives to testify against Combs. They aim to create reasonable doubt about whether the victims were coerced or voluntarily participated. One of the most compelling moments has been Cassie Ventura's testimony, delivered while she was heavily pregnant. Her emotional state, combined with graphic descriptions of violence and drug use, has resonated with jurors and the public. Other witnesses, Mia and Jane, have provided detailed accounts, but their credibility has been challenged by the defense through cross-examination focused on their drug histories and past traumas. The court has played a significant role in managing evidence. A motion to suppress certain videos was denied, allowing graphic footage of violence and sexual acts to be presented to the jury. This decision was crucial because it directly impacted the narrative of coercion and violence. The judge has issued warnings to Combs about courtroom behavior, particularly regarding making eye contact or smiling at jurors. Such conduct could be perceived as disrespectful or manipulative, risking sanctions or even removal from the courtroom. The judge's admonitions reflect the importance of maintaining courtroom decorum and ensuring that the defendant's behavior does not influence jurors unfairly. The potential for appellate issues arises if the defendant is barred from participating fully or if courtroom conduct is perceived as prejudicial. The RICO statute is a powerful tool for prosecutors because it allows them to charge a pattern of criminal activity spanning many years. The law's design is to dismantle organized crime by holding entire enterprises accountable, rather than just individual acts. In this case, prosecutors argue that Combs operated a criminal enterprise with a continuous pattern of exploitation, which justifies applying RICO. The law's reach back into years past is critical because it enables prosecutors to include conduct that would otherwise be barred by statutes of limitations. Typically, federal crimes have a 5-year statute of limitations, but RICO's structure allows for extending this period as long as the criminal enterprise persists. The prosecution has meticulously linked conduct from over a decade ago to current charges, establishing a continuous pattern. Predicate acts include acts of violence, threats, blackmail, and sexual exploitation. The prosecution must prove these acts occurred as part of an ongoing conspiracy, with evidence such as video recordings, witness testimonies, and digital communications. To secure a RICO conviction, the government must demonstrate that 2 or more individuals entered into an agreement to commit predicate crimes, with knowledge and intent. Evidence of a conspiracy, such as coordinated efforts to recruit victims or intimidate witnesses, is central. If convicted on the most serious charges, Combs faces a mandatory minimum sentence of 15 years, with the possibility of life imprisonment. Federal sentencing guidelines suggest decades behind bars, especially given the violent and coercive nature of the crimes. Mitchell explained that, despite recent reforms like the First Step Act, violent crimes involving trafficking and coercion typically result in lengthy sentences. The court would likely impose a sentence requiring Combs to serve at least 85% of his term before eligibility for parole or early release. The trial has spanned several weeks, with the government presenting its case through witness testimonies and video evidence. The initial phase focused on establishing Combs' pattern of behavior, including violent incidents and drug-fueled sexual sessions. Cassie Ventura's testimony was a pivotal moment, providing a detailed narrative of her experiences. Her emotional delivery, combined with graphic evidence, aimed to persuade the jury of her victimization. Subsequent witnesses, Mia and Jane, added corroborative accounts, though their credibility was challenged through cross-examination. The defense's strategy has been to undermine their reliability and emphasize voluntary participation. The court has also dealt with evidentiary motions, including attempts to suppress certain videos and testimonies. The judge's rulings have shaped the scope of evidence available to the jury. Reports indicate that jurors have been attentive and engaged, with some showing signs of skepticism toward certain witnesses. The emotional weight of Ventura's testimony appears to have resonated strongly, potentially influencing jury deliberations. The courtroom atmosphere has been tense, with moments of emotional intensity during witness testimonies and graphic video presentations. The judge's warnings about courtroom conduct aim to preserve fairness and prevent prejudicial behavior. A significant legal battle has revolved around the admissibility of videos depicting violence and sexual acts. The defense has objected to some evidence citing prejudicial impact, but the court has generally upheld the prosecution's right to present compelling evidence. The prosecution's ability to challenge the credibility of witnesses like Mia and Jane is crucial. Cross-examinations have focused on their drug histories and past traumas to test their reliability. The judge's admonitions about Combs' behavior, such as making eye contact or smiling at jurors, highlight the importance of courtroom decorum. Such conduct can influence juror perceptions and potentially lead to appeals if mishandled. This case exemplifies the challenges of prosecuting high-profile individuals. Combs' fame complicates jury perceptions, as his charisma and public persona may evoke sympathy or skepticism. The case underscores the importance of meticulous evidence collection and courtroom strategy to overcome potential biases. It also raises questions about societal attitudes toward sex, consent, and celebrity accountability. The legal proceedings serve as a reminder that no one is above the law, regardless of fame or influence. The use of RICO in this case demonstrates its power to address complex, long-term criminal enterprises. By allowing prosecutors to reach back over many years, RICO helps dismantle organized schemes that might otherwise evade prosecution due to statutes of limitations. However, its application requires careful legal craftsmanship, proving a pattern of activity, conspiracy, and ongoing enterprise, elements that demand extensive evidence and strategic presentation. If Combs is convicted on the most serious charges, he faces decades in federal prison. The mandatory minimum of 15 years could escalate to life imprisonment, especially if the court finds aggravating factors such as violence or coercion. Mitchell emphasized that sentencing guidelines are designed to reflect the severity of the crimes, and given the violent and coercive nature of the allegations, a lengthy incarceration is likely. The jury's task is to evaluate the evidence objectively and determine whether the prosecution has met its burden beyond a reasonable doubt. Their reactions, whether they believe the victims, trust the videos, and find Combs' defenses credible, will ultimately decide his fate. The emotional impact of witness testimonies, especially Ventura's, combined with the graphic videos, aims to persuade jurors of Combs' guilt. Conversely, the defense's efforts to undermine credibility and emphasize voluntary participation seek to create reasonable doubt. The judge's warnings about Combs' courtroom behavior, such as making eye contact or smiling, are not trivial. Such conduct can influence juror perceptions and may become grounds for appeal if deemed prejudicial or if it suggests judicial bias. The defense's strategic response, such as promising to control Combs' courtroom demeanor, reflects awareness of these risks. The court's rulings on these issues will shape the trial's final stages and potential post-trial appeals. Finally, Mitchell acknowledged that if Combs is convicted, the possibility of a presidential pardon exists. Historically, presidents have used their clemency powers to commute sentences or grant pardons, often based on political considerations or humanitarian grounds. While speculative at this stage, the potential for clemency adds another layer of complexity to the case's aftermath. The Sean Combs trial encapsulates many facets of modern criminal justice: the challenge of prosecuting celebrities, the power of digital evidence, the application of long-standing statutes like RICO, and the societal debates surrounding sex trafficking and consent. As the trial progresses toward its conclusion, its outcome will resonate beyond the courtroom, shaping legal standards, public perceptions, and perhaps even policy reforms related to trafficking and organized crime. This case exemplifies the meticulous work of prosecutors, the strategic responses of defense attorneys, and the critical role of judicial oversight in ensuring justice is served fairly and thoroughly. If you wish to explore specific aspects further, such as detailed legal analyses, courtroom procedures, or broader societal implications, please let me know.